Hello and welcome to the Oregonian Sports Podcast. Bill Oram joined by Brenna Greene from KOIN 6, the Oregon Sports Broadcaster of the Year for 2023. Brenna Greene.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Well, anything to express my gratitude for you being here so early in the morning.
Is it really that early right now? But you know what? We need to express our gratitude right now just for what both of us endured last night at our respective sporting events that we went to. So we just need to express gratitude for each other.
Yeah, listen, Brenna, we divided and conquered last night, the Oregonian Sports Podcast. You went to Blazers, I was at Timbers. I'm not sure who had it worse. I mean, what I wrote in the headline on my column in the Oregonian was Portland and its terrible, horrid ball, no goal, very bad day. Because the Blazers stunk, lost by 35 points to Golden State. The Timbers got blanked by just a staggering margin, 5-0 in their first postseason game in 3 years.
And which was a play-in game.
And Brenna, here's the thing. Every week we come together and we talk about what's going on in the world of Oregon sports. And every week there's something. And like at the end of the podcast, I say, we'll be back next week with who knows what we're going to talk about. This week we have all of the things to talk about.
Yes.
Okay. Since we last convened, Oregon has risen to number 1 in both the coaches and AP poll. The Ducks are number one team in the country. Which is huge.
Thank God we have something
right?
nice to talk about.
But Lord Almighty, we have to start with the Timbers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because not only did their season end Thursday night, the first season under first year head coach Phil Neville, but the night took a turn for the worse afterwards when Neville proceeded to not only did Neville basically call out the character of his team. I watched the press conference. Yeah. Called out the character of his team, accused players of quitting, repeatedly called the performance an embarrassment, hinted at, if not outright promising, major roster changes in the offseason. All of that, right? Like pretty juicy press conference that was then subsequently blown out of the water by a series of tweets that people have probably seen by now from Evander, the Timbers MVP caliber midfielder who had a terrific season, obviously is the nexus of their attack in the midfield. He tweets an apology to Timbers fans and then turns the onus on the organization itself, firing shots at, we presume, Merritt Paulson, maybe Ned Grabavoy, saying, and I quote, "Portland fans do not deserve the people who have power over this club. People who say they are men but do not keep their word. People who are only there when the team wins. Unfortunately, these are things we have no control over." End quote. He said fans deserve much more, and said that the players and staff did everything they could, but quote, "Sometimes we have no control over what happens, and what happens off the field reflects on the field." End quote. All right, I'm interested.
Intrigued.
So here's what I found out this morning, Brenna, and then we're going to dissect this in every possible way. But I do want to provide this context. So Evander is under contract with the Timbers. He just completed the second year of the 4-year contract he signed when the Timbers paid $10 million in a transfer fee to acquire him in 2022. Club record transfer fee. He has obviously outperformed the contract that pays him about $2.3 million a year. The Timbers have put a new contract in front of Evander this summer. There's been inbound interest from other clubs. They put a new contract in front of him that would pay him $13 million over 3 years, starting next season. He has not signed that. And so you basically have had this month-long stare down between the Timbers and Evander over what he's worth and his value. And so who knows how those conversations have gone. Obviously, Evander feels feels disrespected, or maybe that there were promises made that are not being fulfilled with that contract offer. But like, I do think it's notable. It's important to say here that the Timbers are trying to increase his, at least this contract, as it was explained to me, would increase his salary by $2 million a year, and would get him more in line with other stars in the MLS. It wouldn't put him on the tier of, the top players, but he'd be a top 15, top 13 paid player in MLS. Is that good enough for Evander? But I guess what I want to just stress is at the core of this, like almost all like player team disputes, frankly, it comes back to the issue of money. And right now, it's important to know that there is a contract negotiation and dispute ongoing between the Timbers and their star player. So, Brenna, unpack.
I mean, yeah, what a night. That was, I'm not going to lie. I don't go back and watch every Timbers press conference, but I was like, sign me up for this one, and watched it at like midnight last night. Because I knew I had to. I knew I had to watch it. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, I thought that Phil's press conference felt a little bit more defeated than I thought it would sound, if that makes sense. I expected him to be a little bit more spicier, but he was still, he was still Phil. Like, there's still, he was not afraid to say what he wanted to say. And I mean, Chara, I would not say fully, but definitely, backed up some of what Phil said in terms of players quitting and things like that. And, he said that basically the younger players, it's now time for them to stop acting like they're young players. They've got to get their ish together. So, ish. And then I'm just perusing Twitter and I see the Evander tweets and I'm like, yo, hold on. What is happening?
And at first, I just want to say, like, when I first saw the Evander tweets, I thought he was responding initially, like the first read, responding to what Phil had said. And then you realize, no, there is something deeper here. No. This is not about like Phil saying that the team has quit. This is directed higher up the masthead than the coach.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Just with everything that has gone on with, and I think that it makes sense. I think anybody who's reading those tweets, it makes sense. But with everything that has happened over the last however many, years with Merritt Paulson, like, when you see something like that, your mind automatically goes to him, because it hasn't been the smoothest last 2-3 years. Let's put it that way. So yeah, I mean, on some levels, like, it's like kind of refreshing to see somebody just like say it. It's like to see someone just like speak their mind and not be like shy about it. So I kind of respect it because, in today's day and age, there's so much like innuendo and things backdoor and all that sort of stuff. Vander just said it, man. So I'm like, okay, all right, like, good for you. And the fact that he said it before, I believe exit interviews are Friday.
Yep.
So he said it and he's now going to have to talk about it. So, I mean, like, he's not running. He's not, and he knew that exit interviews were Friday.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm interested to see how they handle that situation. That should be fascinating. But yeah, it's so at some levels I'm like, well, I mean, I like, thanks for saying it straight up. Like, this at least we can actually get some legit answers to it, hopefully, unless, like, some weird thing happens and he doesn't show up for that, which, could happen. But yeah, it's, it just always feels like, I shouldn't say it always feels like, but It's just an organization over the last however many years where if it's not one thing, it's another thing.
Well, that is certainly true. And I think that there is also the part of this that's like, if this is just a contract dispute and Evander is not happy with like the number that's been put in front of him, and he's trying to, get some goodwill on his side and besmirch the organization, it's just not a situation where Merritt Paulson really has earned really the benefit of the doubt over the last several years. And so, I'm open to this being, an ongoing negotiation that ends well, but you're right that there seems to be kind of always something with this club. And I don't know. I don't know what to do with that other than to say, like, you have one of the most skilled players in the history of the organization who is suddenly not happy with his situation. And maybe that's purely financial. Maybe that's other incentives and perks. I mean, you're dealing with an international soccer player, soccer star who could play in most leagues in the world, and, and like I said, there's been inbound interest. There was, interest from a Brazilian club. There was an offer that the Timbers rejected. There was an offer from a Qatari club that the Timbers rejected. So they've not only invested in Evander, they have warded off suitors to keep him here. Like, they need him to be happy and they need him to be committed. So it's a real, I don't know, it's an inflection point, I think, for the Timbers. Like, how do you make this right? Can Evander be pacified? Because he seems pissed off. And, I don't know what the future for these sides looks like, other than to say he is under contract for 2 more years. So if he's going to take shots at the organization, he could, the Timbers could just tell him to kick rocks. We're not going to give you a new contract. They could do that.
Yep, they could.
So I just don't know where this leads. And I think you're right. Exit interviews are going to be really interesting, because also Evander is saying this at a time when, like, the team has not played well. They limped to the end of the finish line of the season, finished 9th, and then they get absolutely smoked in a play-in game. But by the way, was at home. Was not supposed to be a home game.
Nope.
Like, what would this have looked like if it was played in Vancouver? Like, they would have lost 10-0. Like, this was a gift that you got to play in front of your supporters, who make a real difference. Like, you have a significant, like, home field advantage with the Timbers Army, and you get that gift, and instead this is the performance you turn in. The team was clearly not engaged, distracted. Evander was not good. Evander was among the Timbers' problems last night.
Yeah.
He was, sloppy and, imprecise. Apparently Jonathan Rodriguez is not 100%. He was injured, and Neville said that he probably shouldn't have been playing, but did because of the circumstances, which explains some of his runs. There were a couple of balls to him that I just didn't understand why he didn't get to them, and like why they went into touch. Look at me, soccer lingo. So I don't know. Interested to see what happens, but I do take the point that this is yet another example where Merritt Paulson and the Timbers seem to be at odds with their players. But I also would not dismiss the fact that you're dealing with a star player who is a star 26-year-old who is on a pretty meteoric rise. He played at an MVP level this year, and he wants to cash in on that. And so he is creating what leverage he can to try to get paid more. So I think that both those things are true at this point, and I hope we learn more on Friday and get a sense of where the organization is with Evander, because if you pay him the 3 years, $13 million, $4.3 million that works out to, that is more than, by just a hair, than last year's MVP in Cincinnati, Acosta. So you're paying him, a market rate, but you are not, you're not coming in way over the top. You know what I mean? Like, you're not paying him like, Herrera in Houston, who's at 5'2", and then you start getting into like the European, like caliber players who could also be playing anywhere in the world. I mean, like forget Messi, like Sergio Busquets is at 8.7. But like, so I think the question does become, is that enough for a player of Evander's caliber? But then again, how do you assess what that caliber is when, with the season on the line, he completely disappears? And by the way, gets a yellow card for just shoving a dude out of bounds. Like, it's like, so he's also kind of has this.
He does have a history of being a little spicy on the field, to say the least.
Yeah, and like maybe maybe he needs to have that trait to give you everything else that's great. Like if you don't have that level of like, things can go wrong. Maybe you don't get the things that go right. But it's like you're already playing poorly and your team's getting smoked, and now you're gonna behave that way. It's like that. I don't like that.
I'm remembering correctly that he headbutted a player last year, correct?
Did he headbutt somebody last year? I mean, there were so many things last year.
There was something that happened last year with him and getting kicked out of a game that was just like crazy egregious.
He definitely did get kicked out of a couple of games. He, red cards. I remember the first game after the Timbers fired Gio, he picked up, I want to say 2 yellows or maybe a yellow, and he conceded a penalty. It was actually against Vancouver. It was against the Whitecaps at home. And it was the first game after they fired Gio. The Timbers were like trying to basically reset, new beginning. They played well enough to win. And then again, the hardcore Timber fans are gonna check me on this, but I believe he conceded a penalty that ended up being the difference in the game. And it's like on a reckless challenge. And it's like, what are you doing? And this was amid a time when I think he got a red card again in the series against the team from Liga MX.
I might be misremembering the exact situation that happened. It may not have been the headbutt, but it was something that was egregious. He got kicked out.
I mean, there were a lot of situations where he was volatile on the pitch.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, and here we are. We've spent however many minutes talking about Evander where we haven't really talked about what actually happened last night.
See, this is great. This is great PR.
Yeah, it's one way to just completely distract from, we lost 5-0 and conceded 3 goals in 11 minutes. Mm-hmm. Like, so I'll give everybody that. Like in some ways it kind of distracts from what actually happened out on the pitch. I mean, what an absolutely insanely miserable performance. I mean,
it was an ass kicking.
Yeah, like, I obviously wasn't there, so you have more of a feel of how it all felt. But like, you mentioned the fact that they weren't even supposed to host.
Yeah,
they just happen to, Phil Neville says before the game that, God must be a Timbers fan. I don't know about that anymore, man.
About that, huh?
If God was a Timbers fan, I don't think it would have gone the way it went. So, you have this gift and you just don't capitalize. You don't at all. And just they just kind of petered out to end this season. There wasn't really a lot of, you were not playing your best football in October.
And football. You mentioned the God is a Timbers fan line from Neville. Did you see what the Whitecaps coach said after the match?
No, I did not. I missed that.
I would like to say this in like a but he said, God can be a Timbers fan, but God doesn't exist for me. It's just so good. Like,
it is good.
It's one of those lines where it's like, like Phil Neville may well be remembered all time for that quote. Like that could be the quote that people remember Phil Neville for, well after his tenure. But I will say this about Phil, by the way, like you mentioned him seeming really defeated. I agree. He was extremely frustrated. He also did say, that he was more determined than ever.
Mm-hmm.
Like that the loss, like he was like going to bottle this feeling, and that this loss made him feel more determined than ever to bring success to the club. And he said, hey, I've got a 3-year contract, and we are going to have success here in those 3 years. And I don't want to lose sight of the fact that the Timbers, they did return to the postseason. It was in 9th in the play-in, and they got trashed. So it's not the progress that you might take that to be. But like, this was a fun team that was entertaining to watch.
Yeah.
For most of the year was number 2 in goals behind Miami with Messi. And, just had kind of unsolvable problems on the back line and conceded an exorbitant number of goals.
Yeah, we know that defense is going to be the first thing that gets a makeover.
So I do give Phil Neville a lot of credit, I think, for breathing some life into this team that had not had it. They had gotten stale under Gio. Like Gio was great for the club, and they did, reached great heights. But it was time to say goodbye. All the controversy surrounding Phil's hire, he obviously ends up being, in my opinion, a good hire. Like they're on the right track. But I mean, you've got some real issues to figure out defensively, and now you have an unhappy midfielder who is the engine to your entire offensive attack. So I don't know. They're just they've got some work to do, and it's going to be a long off season. Speaking of long seasons, Brenna.
Oh boy.
Sorry, I took the opportunity for the segue. I saw the opportunity and I took it.
You had to. You had to. You had to. It's like that Vancouver defender that just ran at that. It wasn't incredibly placed pass. It was the defense should have been all over that pass for that third goal that they had. You had to run at it. I mean, it was just too easy.
Yeah. So. By the way, you did say that. I just want to say, like, from basically the first kick last night, it was Vancouver was getting to every 50-50 ball. They were making correct passes. They were much more aggressive defensively. The Timbers were not giving. This is hard for me to say as a non-professional athlete, and I hate the cliche of one team wanted it more than the other. But the Timbers just didn't look engaged with what was happening, and they were not playing as hard. Like, simply put, they were not playing as hard as Vancouver was. Okay. Long season. The Portland Trailblazers. Can I get your... You were at Moda Center. Presumably, you and I both faced the same fork in the road this week. Do we go to the Blazers season opener? Or the Timbers season ender, as it turned out? You went right, I went left. What was it like at Moda Center last night?
First quarter was great. It was like, oh, wow, like this team has a little life, a little pep in their step. All right, okay, I see it. We're hustling, we're moving, we're grooving, we're getting rebounds, we're going. And then the next 3 quarters was like, oh, yes. You are who we thought you were. Okay, got it. Great. Well, at least we got a quarter. Sorry. So, it was just it was, I mean, they are who they are.
But that's not true. Like, that's not true. Although, of course, but like, they are not like the same product that we've seen. Like, there are new players. There are things to be excited about this team. At least in theory. And I have had some excitement for this Blazers team because I think Donovan Clingan is going to be really good. I think Denny Avia is going to be really, really good. And so it discourages me that after 48 minutes that we're kind of already back to, here we go again. We've seen this before. Because what excites me about this season is like the updated version of this team, which isn't entirely what we've seen before. But you've seen Scoot, turn the ball over and miss layups. You've seen Jeremy Grant, chucking the ball and DeAndre Ayton disappearing. Like, I don't know. Like, I want this team to be fun bad and not just bad. Be fun bad.
Well, I think fun bad. One of the issues with fun bad last night was that you look at the box score. I mean, 2 categories where you can be fun bad, okay? 3-point shooting, fast break points. Blazers made 8 threes last night. No bueno. For the majority of the game, it was at 6. They made 2 in like the last few minutes or whatever. And then they shot 23% from 3. And then you have the fast break points category, which was a category that we have been told was going to be higher this year. We've been told we're going to move, we're going to groove, we're going to be running the break, blah 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 blah. 5
fast break points.
They had 5 fast break points. Yeah.
So So I was trying to keep an eye on the Blazer game while I was at Timbers.
Yep.
And also, we haven't even touched on the issues around the broadcast that has been, unfortunately, a clunky rollout for the Blazers. But when I was watching in the first quarter, the Blazers were running. Denny Advia was getting rebounds and pushing the pace, which is like one of my favorite things about him is that he can lead the fast break, and he can take the rebound and lead the fast break, or if it's off a Klingon block, he can lead the fast break. I saw that. They just weren't finishing. They were getting out and running in the first quarter. And so that has been a hallmark of this training camp was, this team that Chauncey has been very, very consistent about pushing the pace. And so I think that they, at least, and tell me what you saw, they started that playing that way, and then they lost. Then they just lost the rope.
They just lost steam.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like the longest second half I've ever encountered. Maybe only the longer one I've been at a Blazers game was 2 years ago, ironically, against the Warriors in their final regular season game.
Oh boy, I was there.
Yeah, that was a long second half. You remember that? Yeah.
I remember a lot of players who are not in the NBA being on the court for the Blazers in that game.
Yes. So I guess at least we had players who will be in the NBA in this one. But man, it was like I was watching I don't even know. It was a malaise going on out there in the third and fourth quarter. It was like, how is this even like happening? I don't know. Like I couldn't even process that I was at a basketball game. It was just like, I don't know, there's people moving right now. That's all I know. like
if that is an accurate reflection of what was going on, and I wasn't watching, and at that point, so yeah. But like,
let's put it this way. Let me just say, I had a friend text me who was at the game who said they spent the entire third quarter at a bar in the arena because they were just so like over it.
Was that friend Chauncey Billups?
I think Chauncey Billups wishes he was that friend.
So, I guess the thing I would say about that is like, you just don't want, even you can lose, you can even get blown out, but like, you don't want the vibes to be that bad in the first game of the season.
And Chauncey admitted they were that bad, by the way.
Like that is, and I would probably put that on Chauncey. And I listen, and like, this is your team. You are in the last year of your contract. You are by any account, you're on the hot seat. I mean, who knows if the Blazers are going to have any interest in extending his contract or bringing him back. But I would just say that that you are a reflection of your head coach in that situation, and it's the job of the head coach to keep the team engaged, motivated, even when you're losing. You want those guys playing hard, running through the tape. And I think that, like, you saw that last year when they were losing a lot of games. I did think, and especially late in the year, I thought you saw them playing hard for him. So it's not a great sign that in game one you kind of lost that. But here's the problem with the Blazers. This team is really badly built from a roster construction standpoint, meaning that you can't just be young and fun. You pay DeAndre Ayton $35 million to start at center.
Yep.
And he's not, whether you think he's good, whether you think he has the right mentality, throw all that out. He's just not going to be your future, your center of the future. So now you're kind of in this marriage with somebody who's not part of what you're doing. Jeremy Grant's getting paid $30 million. Yes, be your starting power forward. He's under contract for 4 more years. He's 30 years old. He wants to shoot the ball every time he touches it, no matter where he is. He's not part of your future. You're in a marriage that doesn't make sense. Matisse Thybulle is one of the best defenders in the NBA. He's not overpaid by any measure, but not part of your future. Anthony Simons, thank God he exists, because somebody needs to be a credible NBA scorer and player in that backcourt. But he's not part of the future.
Yeah.
And so you are putting out a product that does not get you closer to being the team you want to be, because 3 of your starters, if things go well, have no business being part of this franchise anymore. If you are a Blazers fan, you want more than anything for Anthony Simons to be traded, because that means that Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe have proven to Joe Cronin that they are the backcourt of the future. They need to be the backcourt of the future because of how they got here, what the team gave up to draft them, the level at which they came in. Scoot Henderson's the number 3 pick in the draft, and you drafted him, essentially costing you the end of Damian Lillard's career, which I think 29 other NBA teams would have made the exact same decision in that situation. But that's the trade-off you made. And so he needs to be the guy. So far, he's not the guy.
He didn't even start last night.
Well, no, and I don't think starting Ant and Scoot together would make sense just from a balance standpoint. So I'm okay with him coming off the bench, and I think as long as Ant's here, Shaedon's going to start with Ant, and when he gets back healthy, and then and Scoot comes off the bench, that's okay. But you need to see and be convinced that Scoot and Shaedon are the guys that they can do this before you trade Ant, because Ant is good. He doesn't really fit with what you're doing, but you don't just want to trade him to clear the way for a guy who sucks. And so that's what they're waiting to see. So trading Anthony Simons would mean that something is going really, really well in the development department. And so far that hasn't happened.
No. I didn't see as much Donovan Clingan as I wanted to see during meaningful moments last night either.
Big block off the glass though. That was fun.
Yeah. But there's a lot more DA than Donovan.
He's more in D-way.
I mean, it would not be an Oregonian Sports podcast if it weren't for a god-awful pun without you. So thank you so much.
Great plug for the Oregonian Sports Podcast. # Oregonian Sports Podcast @ Oregonian Sports Podcast on social media. That's not true. We're not on social media like that, but I'm at Bill Oram and she's at Brenna Greene _.
Wow.
Green with an E.
Wow. What a plug. Yeah, it was hard to watch.
Would you have rather been at Timbers?
Ooh, that's a good question. No.
Which was more depressing?
Well, here's the deal. The Blazers have cinnamon rolls at their facility, and the Timbers don't, so I got to give the win to the cinnamon rolls. There you go.
Timbers have ice cream sandwiches in the press box.
They do.
I did not partake, but ice cream sandwiches. It was 38 degrees last night, too.
Yeah, it comes down to, if we're, the level of play for both teams was not great, so therefore I must, I have to call that kind of, well, no, but what the Timbers did last night was worse. Because it was in the playoffs, because it was a gift at home, because it's just an absolutely uninspiring performance. At least the Blazers had one quarter where they were okay.
You know why the Timbers result was worse? And I've been thinking about this for like 12 hours because
I'm glad that you've been thinking about this as well. Go on.
Well, the lead to my column was like, is it worse to like get blanked in the last game of the season or to totally lay an egg and basically see all hope of a competitive season go out the window in the first game? And I think it's worse what the Timbers did because they've taken their fans on this ride this year.
Mm-hmm.
And the postseason is supposed to be the payoff for that. And it's supposed to be the reward for that. And you've given fans through a really, successful offensive attack, you've given them hope. You've given them hope that, and like, people said, the Timbers are the team you don't want to face in the playoffs and blah, 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 and whether players bought the hype or not is sort of irrelevant, but like fans do. Fans want to believe. And so fans poured into this team. And then that's what they got in the end. That's what makes it worse. The Blazers are not lying to anybody. The Blazers are like, we're horrible, and we don't want you to get it twisted. And we're going to show you in the first game how horrible we are, so that everything's on the level here, so that everybody knows that we are going to stink this year.
And at least with the Blazers, you still have the hope of the lottery. You still have that moment in May where you watch ping pong balls fall and you just hope to God it all works out. You still have that with the Timbers. That is not the situation. Okay. You got to hope that you can make deals in this off season. That's the only way this is gonna work. So, yeah, at least for the Blazers, there is that little glimmer of hope about 8 months from now.
And that's what makes it worth it, right? Is like the thing I keep coming back to with the Blazers, and I don't want to be an apologist for a team that seems to be perpetually and perennially just bad. But I think they've mostly done the right stuff. Like the draft stockpile they have is really good. They have some very highly prized draft picks. The Bucks pick at the end of the decade is one of the best assets in the NBA right now. They have however many draft picks. They have more players potentially who they can trade to bring back more draft capital. And I know that that's kind of play money, but it helps facilitate more trades down the road. Like they used a draft pick to get Denny Avdia. And you're like, well, why are the Blazers paying out draft picks? Well, Denny Avdia has an incredibly team-friendly contract. He's underpaid. Maybe he should tweet about how bad the owner is and try to get a raise. But I think the Blazers are positioned to build a team that could be good. And obviously they're going to try to build through the draft. That's what you need to do when you're in a market that's not going to attract free agents. Everybody understands that. And so, this season to me is not about sitting around and just waiting and hoping that you get Cooper Flagg or Ace Bailey from Rutgers. It's watching the existing core of this team and seeing if they can be good enough so that if you are lucky enough to add one of those two guys, then you're ready to rock. That you're not just like start saying, oh, thank God we have Cooper Flagg now, and now we're at square one. You want to be at square four when you add Cooper Flagg. So can this team give you hope that like, man, Scoot is an NBA starting point guard. Tumani Kamara, NBA starter. Shaden Sharp, all-star. Donovan Clingan, defensive player of the year. Like, you're not going to get all those, but like, those guys are all like ready. And then boom, you add a Cooper Flagg, and now you've got a squad. Like, do the Blazers have a squad, or do they just have like, are they just waiting for more lottery balls to try again? Like, you want to find out if this is a squad or the beginnings of a squad. Last night, not a squad. But also, I think that I understand that Joe Cronin wants to maximize the trade value of the players he has. I understand that he does not want to trade away Anthony Simons if, Scoot Henderson ain't it. But you are rebuilding through the draft. I think you need to clear the runway. it's hard to trade contracts right now. The second apron is extremely prohibitive when it comes to teams taking on big contracts. So who knows what the market even is right now. But I feel strongly the Blazers need to get those guys out of the way so this can be the young dudes team. And like, you need some adults in the room, obviously, but that adult needs to be, a 33-year-old dude in the last year of a 5-year contract, not a 30-year-old dude in the second year of a 5-year contract. You need somebody who comes in and understands where they are in their career and in their role to be the adult in the locker room and on the floor. And the Blazers don't have that right now. So DeAndre Ayton needs to either be gone. He needs to be gone in some form. Jeremy Grant needs to be gone. Anthony Simons needs to be gone, because you cannot actually turn the page and you cannot see this team, and this team cannot come together as the team when there's such a power imbalance on the roster. Mm-hmm. And, with DeAndre Ayton, I think the trade market is pretty much zero. I've already made the prediction on this podcast that he's going to end the season just benched. Have I already said that?
Yeah.
So that is where I'm at. I just think that everything the Blazers need to do needs to be about pushing everybody else toward the exits. Clingan, Kamara, Henderson, Sharp. Forgot one. Oh, Advia. That's your team. Those are your 5 guys. Everybody else can go away.
Yeah. They have done it in different forms, but ultimately it all looks the same. This franchise for years and years and years has been 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And that is the problem this all breaks down to, That's what it all breaks down to. You have forces on this roster that are diametrically opposed to one another.
Yep. Totally. And I think that Joe Cronin would say, give him truth serum, he'd be like, I'm willing to ride out that discomfort.
Yeah.
Because of where we are in the process. And I just am not. I'm ready for this to be the young dudes team.
Well, we'll see what happens. It should be fascinating. We have an interesting Pelicans squad coming in on Friday that basically doesn't have a center. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe they can just take one of the centers with them after the game, so that we can clear some room for Donovan Green.
Right? I mean, also here's what the first shoe to drop, by the way. Robert Williams III is not that far off from a return. Mm-hmm. He is, basically there is an expectation that he'll be back within a week, 2 max.
Yeah.
If Robert Williams gets on the floor and shows that he is not just he's a shell of his former self, he is going to be highly in demand. New Orleans and Memphis are both starting rookies at center. They have no depth at that position. Robert Williams is an absolute eraser defensively. Obviously you'd rather, like you said, maybe, hey, can we interest you in a DeAndre Ayton? The answer is probably no, but you probably interest them in a Robert Williams and get something back. And that clears more time over the course of the season for Donovan Clingan, who, in my opinion, is going to outplay DeAndre Ayton as the season plays out. But that's going to be the first shoe to drop when we talk about moves the Blazers are going to make.
Yeah.
By the way, Brenna, this is out of order, but I do want to just say, going back to the Evander conversation, while we've been on this podcast, there's been yet another story on this. So in addition to my reporting on the contract, Tom Bogert, who's one of the great MLS insiders, formerly The Athletic, reported. Another source stresses it's not just the contract value. Evander and his camp feel the club has broken his trust, and he cannot believe any promises. Apparently, this dates back to the club's process signing him originally in 2022, and but these sources did not specify what promises were broken. So we have a lot of like saber rattling. I agree that, I think we need to know what promises were broken before we say this is on the Timbers. Like, what did they do? The offer that they've made would be the most lucrative in the history of the club. So, and again, he is not a free agent. He is not due a new contract. You are putting this on the table in good faith to reward him for being one of the best players in the league. So this is going to be something we just keep monitoring, but I thought that was interesting and a helpful update to our earlier conversation.
It certainly seemed like to me that there was more than just money involved with what was said.
So. Yeah, it felt very personal.
Yes, it did.
Brenna, you were at the Blazer game, unfortunately, but that means that you were able to watch the game.
Ooh.
Sorry, we got to go there.
Yep.
So the Blazers make the move to over-the-air TV. And I think that there is a re-education of fans that needs to happen about how to watch the team and what over-the-air actually means.
Yes.
And it is not straightforward. It is not one-stop shopping. And there is a reason the Blazers have been giving away digital antennas and that they gave fans 5,000 digital antennas. It's because probably the easiest way in a Sinclair market to watch the Blazers is with a digital antenna. I know that feels very analog and very like leave it to Beaver, but if you have a digital antenna, which costs like $20 at, is Best Buy still a thing? Best Buy, Fred Meyer, wherever.
Amazon.
Don't even have to leave your couch. I could order one right now while we're on this podcast. Plug it into your TV and, you're on channel 2, which is K2. You click up one, that's 2.2. There you go. This is a recalibration of where things live in the age of like 9 million streamers. Like I had YouTube TV, like full disclosure, as of yesterday morning, I thought I was still going to have access to this. I don't. If you have Hulu, you don't get it. If you have, Dish, you don't have it. Where the confusion really got, and I think that that's just like a rewiring of where it is. It's on Xfinity. If you have cable, it's on Xfinity. There's a channel for it. If you want to invest in Blazer Vision, which is $120, if you're in Portland, I don't think you should have to pay $120 if the whole point is that this is supposed to be easy and free. But that is an option that exists. Where things got real messy yesterday and where there was confusion and, I guess like my reporting played a part in the confusion, but only because the Blazers website that is a primer on where to watch the games listed Fubo as a place that it could be streamed and DirecTV for satellite. So I tried to confirm with the team and did confirm with the team that was accurate and had only been finalized yesterday, that the deals with Fubo and DirecTV were only finalized yesterday. So we write a story saying, hey, in addition to Xfinity, in addition to Blazer Vision, in addition to digital antenna, if you have Fubo, the streamer, or DirecTV on satellite, you will also have access to this channel. Confirmed with the team. Dwayne Hankins, president of the Blazers, said, yes, that is accurate. Tip-off comes, Fubo and DirecTV customers blowing up Twitter, can't find the game. So, we're in a situation where the team and Sinclair are scrambling to get this on as many platforms as possible. Carriage issues are kind of universal in sports. We've dealt with it with the Big Ten this year.
We've dealt with it with the Blazers
for sure. The sides have the most leverage right when games are about to start, and fans are like, I want them right now. So that is kind of where we are, and the deal was done with DirecTV and Fubo. I guess my understanding is there's just like a back end process of actually getting the channel up and running that didn't happen by game time. So the Blazers VP of Communications, Natalie King, said, it's going to be on those platforms soon. So if you are a DirecTV or Fubo customer and you saw our story yesterday and we're all excited that you didn't need to get something new and then we're confused because you didn't have the game, it's going to be there soon. I don't know what soon means. I hope it means Friday. Like if they thought it was going to be by the end of the night, by last night, then they must think it's going to be by the next game, Friday. But that promise hasn't been made. So if you're a Fubo DirecTV customer, either be patient or go buy a digital antenna. Those are kind of your choices. I do think long term still, this is a great thing for fans because rather than a monthly fee for whatever service you feel like you need to have to watch the Blazers, if that is a primary thing you have cable or whatever for, you can a one-time $20, $30, $40 purchase of a digital antenna, depending on the one you get, and you're good. But it's kind of a mess. And then when the question of like YouTube, Hulu, all those, January 1, they're going to put Rip City TV on KUNP, which is currently Univision, and that will be where games are then. And like the thought is that there's a better chance then of getting those onto the other streamers then, but those deals still haven't been negotiated either. I guess one thing I would just say is that I don't think this has been well explained, but I don't fault the Blazers for that. I actually think the Blazers have tried to be out front of this. Their website is very helpful. Unfortunately, it just had that information that was not up, that was apparently premature. I think the digital antenna giveaway, was smart. Like from my seat, I don't think I've even fully understood what this meant. I don't think that like we or like the public have done a great job of really understanding what this meant. So now games are actually here. It's like, where the hell are they? I think now we know.
There are just so, as somebody who has dealt with, angry viewers over not being able to see channels in my time, I just know that there's so many factors at play for whether or not a station is on a particular service. And there's so many services. And so it's a lot. So for me, I am more sympathetic than what the public is. Which, makes total sense why the public isn't sympathetic anymore, because they've been dealing with this stuff for years now. Or at least for a year, you could say. And then, even before that, there were so many issues with Comcast and getting those onto other platforms. So, I understand all the factors that are at play. I mean, I don't fully understand anything ever with that sort of stuff.
But you understand that there are a lot of factors at play.
There's a lot of things at play. Yeah.
Right.
However, for me, I guess I'm more like getting an antenna isn't hard. I have an antenna at my place.
It's not hard.
Like I actually don't have cable because I am in the office late nights so often during sporting events. Like I'm like, I don't know if it really actually makes a lot of sense for me.
Yeah, and this is not an antenna that goes on your roof. You know what I mean? You're not like up like this is a small thing that you can stick on your wall or next to your TV. I've had one before. I don't now, but I've had one before. But I mean, I think it sounds like a difficult step. It isn't. But again, this is where I say it like takes like a little bit of a rewiring of how fans think about consuming things. So like it feels like a debacle on night one, and I acknowledge that the rollout has not been clean, but I don't think that fans are going to see this as something that was hard. And I had a fan email me and say the Blazers are harder to find than ever. I don't think that's true.
I don't think that's true.
I think it's confusing because it's new.
It's confusing because it's new, and it's confusing because there's so many buts, ifs, and ands. Okay?
Correct.
And that's the problem. It's not just, hey, it's everywhere, which is kind of what this was advertised as.
It was. And when you say, hey, we've partnered with Sinclair and, the games are going to be on K2. Well, the games aren't on K2. 6 games will be on K2, including this upcoming Sunday. But if the games were on K2, this would be very clean and very easy. And they're just not. So, I think that maybe the Blazers, I think maybe fans feel a little bit duped by that. But in the long run, this is still going to be a net positive, and this is not going to be a difficult thing for people to figure out.
Yeah. I know you need to skedaddle. So just, I guess we're going to do 1 second on Oregon being ranked number 1. 2 words, who cares?
Who cares?
According to Dan Lanning.
Yeah, that was this week too. Wow.
That was this week. Isn't that crazy? And we keep on trucking, I guess. We'll see how the Illinois game goes. I would hope that they come out and take care of business. I think that they will.
I do too. I think the 23 or whatever they're favored by is a really big number for a team that has played really, really well.
It's a big number.
But I think that's a little bit of the number one bonus. And, the Ducks, Ducks have been very good. So I don't think we're going to be talking about an upset next week, but it's certainly not outside the realm of possibility. And, it's things change when you become the hunted. And that's where the Ducks are right now.
I can tell you that your upset pick of Purdue did not come to be. That's for sure. So
it didn't.
Yeah, didn't.
The Ducks didn't lose to Purdue.
No, they did not. I regret to inform you.
The problem with spicy takes is that sometimes they got to be a little bit out there. I don't think I ever said Purdue would win, by the way, but I did say that there was a trap potential there.
Yes,
but again, that's what has made this Ducks season very impressive, is they did not fall for the trap. But every game from here on out is a trap game, really, because they are going to be heavily favored against every team. So this season is fascinating and continues to be fascinating for the Ducks. Okay, Brenna, we are out of here. I appreciate your time early on this Thursday morning after a late night with the Blazers and Evander's Twitter account. Certainly appreciate you and your time. Hope fans continue to find your work on KOIN and Portland CW. I'll be at the Oregonian Oregon Live. We'll both be in the press box at Autzen Stadium this weekend to see what the number one Ducks have in store. Brenna Greene, thank you.
Adios.